Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Green Arrow FPL podcast and Fantasy Football Hub as we look ahead to Game Week 1 with a little more information and probably much more confusion as we head into the final 8 days or so. My name is Fergi, and I'm here as usual with the brilliant Rich Clarke. Rich, how are you? And how is your planning going? An interesting week.
Yes, mate. I'm fine. I'm very well. I think I'm possibly more confused this week than I was last week in terms of my team and what moves to make. The pace of everything, the pace of the transfer market, the number of injuries, the volatility across the teams seems to have increased rather than settled down. I think we've only got one more whole round of preseason games to go, and hopefully they'll provide more answers than questions. But right now, I'm all over the place. I don't know about you.
I'm in a pickle, mate. I'm in a pickle, so we can be in a pickle together. We can all be in one big jar together, pickling away. One person who doesn't look in a pickle, the absolutely unflappable and the wonderful Big Man Bakar is with us this week. How was your summer, Bakar? And are you rearing to go for the new season?
Hello, Fergie. Hello, Rich. Thanks for having me. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. The summer was nice. I mean, I took a nice break. I got married in June. I sort of knew that was practically going to be the only time I was going to be free for the entire year. So I, planned it in advance. But now, the honeymoon period is well and truly over, and we're back to the shenanigans of FPL. So I'm very, very excited to be sitting here chatting to, two of my most favorite people who I listen to week in, week out.
Superb. It's great to have you with us, Bakar. How are you? We'll talk about your thoughts and your plans, your team and stuff. How have you found pre-season so far in terms of being able to make a team you're sort of settled with? Are you kind of nearly there, or you got some big decisions left to make? Or
I think I'm sort of settled with some of the players that I know that I want to build my team around. For example, Salah, Palmer, to a large extent, Fernandez, I know will be my team. These three players will be almost certainly be in my Game Week 1 team, and I will be building my team around them. The fact that FPL have introduced the defensive contribution points have sort of put my head in a spin, because usually over the years we've become accustomed to just picking the best defenders from the best defenses. For example, double Arsenal defense was a no-brainer for pretty much the entirety of the past 2 seasons, but I don't think that would be the case anymore, because some of the defenders from some of the lesser teams which play with a deep block, like Nottingham Forest, Everton, etc., have benefited largely with the new rule. So I'm sort of in a pickle where I don't exactly know how much to invest in some of the premium defenses, or whether to go cheaper and go for the defensive contribution points. I'm sort of struggling to weigh how much value to attach to the new rules.
Well, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that over the next 45 minutes or so. So hopefully, but it sounds like we're all in a pickle, which is going to be it's going to be interesting. We also have Scott, the producer, pulling the strings behind the scenes. A big welcome to Scott too. I suppose just I'm in that point in my team where I'm overthinking everything. I'm kind of Salah in, Salah out, chip crazy. Then I think, do I play it sensibly? Even though my thoughts have even changed in the last hour from the draft I've put on the slide, which we're going to show at the end of the show, is like Salah in. And ever since we've had a kind of very brief chat pre-pod again, Rich, I think I'm Salah out again now. So we'll talk about all these things. Welcome everyone in the chat. Colin Johnson is in. Al Rockman is in. Gianni Kalioski, Helga R. Fantasy Fluker, finally going to catch a live episode. Great to have you with us. Helga is in. He says, going strong in midfield with Salah, Palmer, Fernandez, Wirtz, and Anderson. That is incredibly strong. FPL Freddy, Cedric Levy, just a dad posting stuff. He said he can't wait to see the reaction from Big Man when they see the Fergie master plan. I don't know if you've seen my master plan, Bakar, but if you haven't, I'll give you a shock later. You'll have to adjust that chair, get it nice and sturdy so you don't fall off it. James Hardin is in. He says Gyökeres himself confirmed it's pronounced Gyökeres. So it's quite easy, actually. I think we're kind of overdoing it a little bit. Gyökeres. Richie Rich is in. FPL Mackham, John Tyner, Ian McLaughlin, and many others. Great to have you all with us this evening. Just before we start, do you want your team rated by AI for free? If you do, just click the top link in the description below and get your team rated out of 100. We'll be showing our current team ratings and our current teams later in the show. Don't forget with this as well, you can sign up to be a hub member. We have the team reveals every single week from myself, Rich, Bakar, the FPL champion, Lovro, some of the best FPL managers. And that 300k members is out of date. So on the bottom it says 300k. We have just pipped 500,000 Fantasy Football Hub members, which is nearly 5% of the whole population of FPL players. So if you're not joining the hub, you are missing out. But yeah, let's have a look at the fixtures and come to you first, Bakar. Just I suppose your macro view on the start of the season. We've heard mine and Rich's. Just really interested, I suppose, on your sort of overall thoughts on how you're going to approach the first 2, 3, 4 weeks. Have you got any surprise up your sleeve? Will you be playing it safe? What are the things you're thinking about at present?
I think when I look at my strategy for the opening few weeks, currently I think the main debate that I have in my head is whether or not to bench boost in game week 1 or 2, which is I assume it's a very common debate in a lot of our heads, especially with Dubravka moving to Burnley and him being priced at 4 million. And Burnley having a very convenient home fixture against Sunderland in game week 2, it obviously the carrot is there for a lot of us to go down that route. I see both pros and cons to it. I think the main pro I see of it is to get it out of the way relatively early without having to sort of use transfers on it later. But the con of it is that we don't exactly have a lot of data or any knowledge of form to go by. And for example, if I was bench boosting at this time last year, I would have ended up with Nkunku and Kwanzaa and Barco in my team, right? And
exactly.
It would have been a recipe for disaster. So at the same time, it's a very thin-edged sword, and I'm trying to sort of weigh up which way to go. I see both pros and cons to it. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but yeah, a large part of what I decide to pick in my game week 1 team will be dependent on this strategy.
I suppose the reason where I'm not really looking too much at game week 2 is I think you make a really good point there. There's lots of people saying, well, you're not going to know who's definitely going to play in game week 1. I think that's probably fair to say that still in game week 2, right? Just because a team plays in game week 1 doesn't mean they're absolutely nailed for game week 2. But also, if you do get a player or two missing from your expected 15 in game week 2 that they're not playing in game week 1, as well as a potential injury, a potential knock, a transfer rumor, all of a sudden you've planned your team out for a bench boost in game week 2, and there may be risks over 1, 2, 3, even 4 of them. I suppose that's the reason why I'm sort of slightly against going into 2. If you commit to 1 and it doesn't go right, at least it's done and it's kind of out of the way. Whereas if you plan for 2, unless you're definitely wildcarding in game week 3, for example, you're probably making moves you don't want to make for game week 3 as well in game week 2. I don't know if I'm making much sense, kind of thinking out loud and waffling. Rich, does that make sense to you, or is it just me in my head?
It does a bit, but I think some of the gifts, if you like, that have become available, will allow you to not carry too much budget onto the bench in game week 2 anyway. So if you were to go for, say, Dubravka and Estev and maybe Mark Gu or whatever, you've spent the minimum you have to on those players anyway. And it's only really, most people should carry a decent 12th man anyway, like an Anderson or somebody like that. So it's you haven't overspent on a bench, even if you decide not to bench boost in game week 2 and then move forward. Your bench might be, arguably, you might not want 2 Burnley players for 12 weeks, but you have an opportunity to play it if the rest of the team that you've put in place remains stable. So I don't think there's too much risk there. And, you might get a chance to look at Mark Gu or whatever, and if you've kept $1 million or even $500,000 back, you might get an opportunity to move that on with a free transfer and improve the bench boost for the second week. So I'm not too too worried about it. We might get one more gift or something, another player moving this week or someone else coming in, a bit like a sort of Dewsbury Hall today suddenly presents itself, and you've got another 500,000 you can trim and put elsewhere. So I think it's definitely well, not definitely, but a one or two thing. And I think a couple of weeks ago when the game launched, we were almost like, game week 1's a no-brainer, right? We've got to bench boost game week 1, and I think we've seen a big shift across the community away from that, and a more open mind being taken.
I think as well that I don't think Arsenal have been too impressive in pre-season, and that is definitely the standout fixture, I think, game week 2, and I think that was the reason, or one of the reasons why I was so adamant about free hitting in game week 2. Getting Saka, Rice, Gyökeres, or maybe Martinelli or Gabriel or someone like that. I think the fact that Arsenal have just haven't really done too much in pre-season like some of the other teams have, maybe leads me to think that you can go without Arsenal, I suppose, in the game week 1 team, whereas I was a little bit nervous about that. Rich, what are your overall thoughts? How has your kind of thinking of the game changed in the last week?
Well, certainly around the bench boost. I think I was very bullish around the bench boost in our first edition that we did, and I was pretty much looking for waiting for that 4 million keeper to drop and then going for it. But you wouldn't really want to bench boost Dubravka away to Spurs, would you? So that's sort of definitely shifted my emphasis onto a week 2 opportunity. I think that there are certain teams, and we've got some snapshots coming up, but there are certain teams who really are sort of almost on fire from a pre-season perspective. Aston Villa look really good, even with a Morgan Rogers injury. They look really good. So certain teams have really stood out and lit it up. So I'm fairly comfortable with the main structure of the team, but more from a price points perspective. I think I want to have that 9 million price point covered in the attackers, and I want to have a balanced spread across the midfield in terms of price points. But some of the edge pieces, as we call them, that the lower priced players are where I've got the most jeopardy in terms of my decision making, and I'm really looking for a bit more knowledge over the coming days.
Yeah, interesting. Who are the teams who are you're targeting, Bakar, to start off with at a team level first?
I think Chelsea have a really good, nice run of fixtures. Spurs as well. A lot of people have sort of been sleeping on Spurs because of their poor performances last season. If I'm not mistaken, they finished 17th. But now, obviously, with Thomas Frank in charge, you'd expect at least some sort of improvement. And the carrot is obviously there with the opening day fixture at home to Burnley. Then even after game week 2, the fixtures are nice. Game week 2 is where it's tough against City, but apart from that, it's nice. I mean, my draft has actually sort of had Solanke all throughout since day 1, since FPL launch. So I'm hoping that he plays tonight. Tonight's fixture is going to be crucial. If he gets any sort of minutes tonight, then I'd be far more confident of him playing in game week 1. Currently, he's the most expensive striker in my team. Rich mentioned Watkins. I think one of the major shifts you see in the game this year is that they've made the forwards a lot less appealing than they were in the previous seasons. And when you look at the forwards, there are not too many standout picks. I personally was planning on going without Watkins, but if Solanke isn't an option, then it's almost if I will probably be forced to pick Watkins. Even 9 million. I mean, I'm sure he's going to do well, but it's just that I was hoping that I'd go down a different route where I'd pick some cheaper strikers and spend the funds across the rest of my team. But overall, when you look at some of the strikers, as Solanke, Evanilson, Welbeck, Strand Larson, I'm hoping Thiago becomes a pick. But when you compare this to the pool of forwards that we have usually at the start of game week 1, this just feels like far less appealing. So I'm looking for a midfield heavy team generally to sort of begin with.
I've got an interesting update for you, Bakar. Paulinho is in the Spurs team this evening, but Solanke is not in the squad again. So there's only, 9 days now till game week 1. So he's in my team as well. So
they've got the Super Cup, haven't they? Next Wednesday, is that right?
Next Wednesday.
That's
competitive
correct.
game. Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
that
one
is.
more
So,
chance
it's
then.
going to be really, really interesting reasons to see. Let's have a look at some players. The top sort of player picks. I suppose firstly, Salah. Basically, I think I can guess the answer here, but Salah can either give you one team or give you another team, can't he? Whether he's in your team or not. Rich, you've still got Salah in your team, I take it.
I have, yeah. He's not moving. Not after my experiences last year.
Car, have you contemplated going without Salah at all, or is he absolutely nailed, locked in, stapled in, and every other kind of fastening mechanism in your Gameweek 1 team?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly considered, the strategy of going without him. I don't think it's crazy, especially if you're planning on wildcarding, let's say in game week 4 or 5, because game week 4 or 5 would be the first time where I would feel really, really scared without going without Salah, because game week 4, Salah has Burnley away. Game week 5, he has Everton at home. And these are 2 weeks where I assume if you're not picking Salah, you're probably picking Haaland, and Haaland in these 2 fixtures has Man United at home and Arsenal away. So the difference in the quality of fixtures is just too big. And if Salah pops off with his ownership, then you don't exactly want to be in a situation where you're trailing the masses in game week 4 or 5. So I just think I'll probably stick with Salah to begin with, especially because I don't want to plan an early wildcard.
Yeah, the only I'm thinking of going without him, and just hear me out. I think I look at these things a bit differently from other people, probably wrongly, but like if I go without Salah, I've got the exact strategy which I want, which is an uber aggressive, super exciting, players all over the pitch, bench boost game week 1, free hit game week 2, fantastic game week 3 team. Not being scared of Salah in game week 3 at all. I can even free hit Salah in game week 2 if he's looking superb, right? But that one game on Friday night, where I'm probably going to be at Fantasy Football Fest, right? Can I let that dictate my whole season? That one game, because I'll probably be bench boosting without Salah. Don't laugh, Rich.
You might as well walk naked through the crowd at Fest. That's how you're going to feel when you go into that room.
I know, but if Salah gets a goal, right, and gets 8 points, double to 16, I'd be fine with that. It's home to Bournemouth. They've just lost all their defense. They're at home, and if he gets 2 goals or 2 goals and assists or even a hat trick, and I start the season, potentially 30, 40 points behind everyone else, I mean, goodness me. But then I do feel that, can I let my whole season or the whole start to my season be dictated to by just one match? And I haven't got the answer yet. I'm going to have to do a lot of reflecting, a lot of looking in the mirror this week. Just stood there thinking, are you brave enough? Are you ballsy enough to go without it all? Because I truly believe that if Salah is sort of capped to 1 goal against Bournemouth, that I think I believe my strategy will win through. So that's the battle I'm fighting with myself. So by sort of 10 o'clock on Friday night, I'll know whether my season is cooked or not, or whether I could be off to a flyer, and have my captain play the following day, for example. But we'll see. Bakar, have you got any other sort of locks in your team? We've got some really popular picks and good players on screen. Got any other locks in your team?
Palmer, for sure. I mean, I think Palmer is even more locked than Salah for me. I think Palmer at 10.5 million is, especially after the form he's shown in the Club World Cup, the fixtures are good. I want to have at least one Chelsea attacker to begin with. I don't think I'll be starting with João Pedro. I mean, I may be forced to consider him if Solanke isn't available. Then again, it's just the lack of forwards. But generally, Palmer, I think, will offer great value. When you look at his price point, there's Saka, but there are question marks regarding, you mentioned Arsenal have not looked great. Their fixtures, even to begin with, aren't amazing in the first 6 game weeks, with the exception of the Leeds fixture that you mentioned. And I also think there's question marks of whether or not he takes penalties, right? So I just think, especially with the new signing, so I just think Palmer, for that flexibility to to start with him for the first, let's say, opening fixtures, 5-6 fixtures, and then move to maybe Saka in game week 7. That's where the fixture swing occurs for Arsenal. Could be a transfer that's just very easy to navigate. So I think Palmer's locked, Salah's locked. I think I think Bruno will be in my team as well. I often
Now,
get.
I was going to
Yeah,
ask you
go on,
about
Rich.
Bruno. I was going to ask you about Bruno Fernandes, Bakar. I wanted you to maybe articulate the case for having him over say a Florian Wirtz or someone around that, that 8.5 million level. Because if you're going to go Salah Palmer, you've got to stretch the midfield to afford a 9 alongside those two. And I just wanted to understand your rationale for wanting him. I know that he's come out very high in the projections, for instance, in terms of his predicted points. However, Man United have a huge amount of improving to do. They're almost a completely new attack, albeit of very nice players. But just wondered if you could sort of embellish the reason you've got a lock on Bruno.
Of course, and I must admit, before sharing my argument, that I've been a Bruno lover for past 2-3 seasons. I often get slated for unnecessarily backing him. So I will begin by saying that the rationale for picking Bruno is actually a bit weaker than it usually is, because as you mentioned, there are a few question marks, especially regarding his role in the side. He'd probably play in a deeper position. I know he played as the 10 in the recent friendly, but I would expect that he drops to the deeper position. Out of all the penalty takers, I think even though he is playing out of position, the fact that he can still benefit from the defensive contribution points will really help him. And even last season, he did rack up quite a few points. If I'm not mistaken, there were close to 20 or just above. So there's that, and the fact that it's going to be a 90-minute man. The fixtures are nice. In particular, what sort of appeals to me is the game week 3 fixture at home to Burnley. Now that's a week where Liverpool are playing Arsenal, and that's a fixture where I guess you can potentially dodge Salah for captaincy. I'm sure Salah has a very good record against Arsenal, but that's still not a fixture where I'd expect Salah to go absolutely mental. So it could be a fixture where you go for a differential in Bruno. I don't think Bruno will be very highly picked. In which case, that game week 3 fixtures just increases his appeal a notch. And generally we've seen over the years, he's just been, over a long sample size, he's just been very consistent. He just has too many routes to points. And you're right. I mean, this time he's competing with the likes of, let's say, Wirtz or Marmoush, and it's not exactly his clear cut. But generally, being the risk-averse manager that I am, I'll probably go with the guy who was tried and tested as opposed to the shiny new toy.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. Rich, you've got some other players on screen as well.
I mean, we obviously Bruno deserves to be there. Based on his pre-season form, United have done very well with their pre-season, especially on their US tour. They won that little summer series, and again, Bruno was scoring and assisting throughout that. All of these players on screen have scored at least 3 times in pre-season, and some of them even more than that. Watkins again scored again last night in a 4-0 win for City. Only played 45 minutes, but again was fine. Gakpo we added yesterday, didn't we, Fergi? Because he now looks a bit unchallenged on the left-hand side. Now Diaz has left the building, and until Isak comes, I think Gakpo should be pretty sure of starts. So he's definitely flying under the radar a bit as a pick. If you, maybe for you actually you're not going to go for Salah, but yeah, he's looking good. And I've got Harry Wilson in there, who might be a little bit of a minutes risk, but he's scored I think 4 goals in pre-season for Fulham and is almost playing as a number 9 for them. So he's really not been someone we've considered because he had a lot of substitute appearances last year for Fulham. But again, if you're looking for someone in that difficult to fill 5.5 position and you don't want to go for a C-bit guy, an Anderson or a Caicedo, then you can look at Harry Wilson in that slot. So I definitely think he looks good, and the Fulham's fixtures aren't too bad either. And on the other side, someone who's not got such good fixtures but has got form is Mateta. So again, the 7.5 striker position is a bit awkward. No one completely stands out. João Pedro could be a minutes risk. Solanke could be injured. Mateta, if Eze departs, could be on pens. Very good season last season, and we'll get a good preview in the Community Shield on Sunday.
Indeed. And there are a few players, as you say, Rich, who are xMins risks now this minute. There could be a real merry-go-round, right, in this next week, especially on the Newcastle. For obviously United have been confirmed that it looks like they are they're going to sign Sesko, which is going to be interesting. What price would you think Sesko would come in at, Bakar? Would he interest you at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I would probably wait and see on that one. I just think there are too many options at United at the moment that if I'm picking Bruno, I'm definitely not going to be investing anywhere else in their attack. I mean, you mentioned xMins risk. I think I tweeted this the other day as well. I think my draft currently is actually hinging on whether or not Wissa leaves Brentford, and I think that is how critical Thiago is in my thinking. That if I get that extra 6 million enabler, now a lot of people are questioning how Brentford will play under the new manager, which is completely understandable given the loss of the key players in Wissa and Mbamo. But generally we've seen Brentford over the years, 4 to 5 years, we've seen that the way they play, the majority of the chances fall to the striker. I know that they may not be as potent in creating chances as previously, but at 6 million, expectations need to be realistic. And if we get a starting striker for 6 million playing for a decent club like Brentford, I mean, I would be all over that. And that enabler would basically help me build my team around, and that would add a lot of squad depth. It's basically gonna make my bench boost a lot more stronger than it would look, let's say, if Wissa was to stay.
Yeah, agree. Wissa is the key to Lotte, right? Obviously, this whole Wissa Isak sort of merry-go-round. Is Wissa going to impact you, Rich, at all if he does?
I think so. I mean, Thiago was in my draft last week that you described as an April Fool's joke, mate. He was there, so yeah, definitely been on my radar. But the same point as Bakar. Really, unless Wissa gets out of the way, Thiago's minutes aren't guaranteed because they may not go with 2 up front. So he's been bought. I mean, he was bought to replace Ivan Toney and got injured almost immediately. So really didn't feature much at all last season. But he's a decent player, and I think they paid good money for him. So he will definitely be the main man if Wissa goes. But I think someone's got to pay more than 25 million for Wissa. Wissa scored 19 goals in the Premier League last season. It's got to be worth, a minimum of 40, I would say. So the whole Newcastle situation and Isak you see there in the foreground, that's really the key. But I can see that Isak thing rumbling on for the rest of August. I can't see that resolving itself just because fantasy football's starting next Friday. I think there's bigger picture than that, and I think it'll go on for weeks. Do you
agree? Yeah, I do. Yeah, when does the window shut? Is it end of August?
1st of September, I think it is. Yeah, I think so.
So that's after game week 3. After game week 3 that is. So it's going on and on, right? On to game week 4, on to wildcard time. Game week 4. Bakar's camera, I think, has just dropped off. I'm sure Scott will get it back on now any second. Rich, there's a few other players on there. We've got Gabriel, we've got Solanke and Gyökeres as well, and there's a lot. And you mentioned João Pedro as well. There's lots of players who are not who could be great options, but we're not sure if they're going to start or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gabriel was straight in my first draft. I think he'd be most people's sort of go-to central defender with attacking promise and the best defense statistically. And again, he's one of these players, a bit like Solanke. He's not kicked a ball yet, so they're running out of pre-season games to get a run out. So if you're bench boosting game week 1, Solanke and Gabriel become very dangerous players to have. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I got caught out by the Gabriel team league a couple of seasons ago. I think everyone swapped to Saliba, and that was on the night, wasn't it? But you've definitely had the forewarning this time that he's a risk. So I wouldn't be going near Gabriel unless he is 100% and plays full pre-season game next week. Even then, Kiwior's been playing a lot of games with Saliba, and Arteta trusts them both. So if there's anything wrong with Gabriel, I can't see him being risked, to be honest. And we're all waiting on Solanke, so I was a bit surprised about tonight's game not being even on the bench.
Yeah. I thought it fortunate that we get to see We'll get to see Liverpool, Palace, and Spurs all play reasonably competitive matches. You know, we're going to get to see that front 3 or 4 of Liverpool. How they're going to line up. We haven't mentioned much about Liverpool yet, apart from Salah. Bakar, interested in your thoughts on, you know, well, Wirtz, Ekitike, you would probably guess is going to start at number 9 in Gameweek 1 as it stands. Obviously, Wirtz in behind. What are your thoughts on that Liverpool attack? Does it excite you for Salah or?
I think it's all right. I think Wirtz is realistically the only guy I would consider for minutes because he can play in midfield, he can play on the left. So I'm pretty sure with the price tag that he's carrying, he's going to play the significant majority of minutes. Gakpo is an interesting enabler as well. I expect him to feature quite a lot. Ketike, I'm not exactly sure about in terms of his minutes. Even with Gakpo, I'm still not sure with Liverpool. If you wanted to invest more in Liverpool attack apart from Salah, I think Wirtz is probably the go-to defender. But generally speaking, I think that the fixtures in game week 2 and 3 are such that you probably don't overload up on the Liverpool attack. Maybe, I mean, I'm personally looking at it this way that I'll reassess Liverpool in game week 4 if Wirtz looks good, or if anyone else like Gakpo or Ketike look good, I'll probably get them in game week 4. But to begin with, I'm still not sure. And I had Virgil in some of my previous drafts, but even though I still sort of like him, I'm now doubting whether Liverpool, especially with some of their injuries, are going to keep a clean sheet in the first 3 weeks. Newcastle away and Arsenal at home in game week 2 and 3 are relatively tough fixtures. So that's my take on Liverpool. I think I will probably start with Salah and just reassess after 3 weeks.
Interesting stuff. Just catching up in a bit in the chat. Eman says that Bradley is injured, so Frimpong could potentially be a good option at the back. Nikolai says it's Wirtz. It's an E sound so I'm calling him Wirtz. Apparently it's Wirtz. Interesting. Apparently Gabriel played 30 or 45 minutes yesterday as well. Visser could end up training on his own. And Average Joe asks Fergie, how much trouble are Spurs in with no Son, Maddison, and maybe Solanke as well? Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Spurs line up come game week 1. Let's have a look then at predicted points for the first 4 game weeks. This is obviously with what we know so far, but Mohamed Salah comes out top, 31 points. It's a scary number. Haaland 27 and Saka 27. So if I go ahead with my strategy, I'm not going to have any of those top 3 players in my team. Palmer 26, Bruno Fernandes 23, Watkins 22, Gakpo 21, Wirtz 21, Ekitike 21, Cunha and Buemo just in behind on 20 and 21, and then Mateta. Ismail Assar is quite high up on predictions. Chris Wood, Gokares, 20, Semenyo, and Eze as well. Rich, you gave a bit of an on Sarr. Is that are you kind of hot on Sarr?
I've put him back in, just because.
He's in your team.
Yeah, struggling with the 6.5 bracket, and then looking at the overall sort of season expected goals, expected returns. He's got something like 17.8 expected returns over the assists or goals over the season, which is the highest of all the 6.5 options, and he stands out. Similarly, he stands out here, doesn't he? Quite high up the table with 6.5 to appear. So. I like Sarr, but I owned him for much of last season, but just not for the real sort of explosive weeks that he had had the 17 pointers and stuff. So really interested in the Community Shield and how Palace play and set up against Liverpool. But I think he's a good pick. Palace's fixtures are mixed, aren't they? They're not great, but they're not awful over the longer run. So I like Sarr.
Good stuff. And then on the these are the pieces now, right? Which could decide how our teams look at. So we've got cycled completing the puzzle, and these are the cheaper players who actually kind of fill those gaps. A few of them are in their old kits. I also haven't included. Oh no, I have got in there. Mark Gue, I think his name is, obviously made a move now, 4.5 million forward to Sunderland. De Vrabker, as we know, 4 million player at Burnley. Dewsbury Hall has completed his move from Chelsea to Everton, coming in at 5 million. I mean, I was reading earlier that he's potentially could play in the number 10 role. They've got half decent fixtures. I think he scored 14 goals last year. Wan-Bissaka as well, and Kudus. But completing the puzzle. Who are the players, Rich? Who are the sort of glue which are holding your team together from these players or others?
The glue, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, certainly the glue transfer going through this morning has sort of led me to put that 4.5 spot on my bench and fill it with him straight away, just because you can't spend less than that, can you, on that 15th player? Doesn't lend itself to a huge immediate bench boost, but you're allowing yourself to maximize the funding you put into your first 11. So I like it for that. I'm not really hopeful of huge amounts of minutes from him initially. I don't even know how many games Sunderland have got left, presumably at least one, maybe two. And I'd like to see him get a start. I mean, if he gets a start, I think you'll see people going for him in droves, just because he's such an enabler at that price. I think I remember, one or two other starting 4.5s in years gone by, but they're very rare. And we might have one there, because I think he's got a clause in his contract that stipulates that Sunderland will be fined if he doesn't get enough minutes. I heard that today. So like him, Dubravka's in for me as well. You've got Wan-Bissaka, I guess, representing the plethora of 4.5 defender options that are out there. Although this week, I think the trend has been more towards Juff, I think, on the other side. And but he's 1% owned, and I think Wan-Bissaka's the most owned 4.5 option in the game.
He's the most owned defender.
Is it
Not
20?
even
Really? Are all defenders?
Yeah, most owned defender. Yeah.
Wow. Superb. What are your thoughts? Oh, sorry, Rich. Go on.
No, I was going to say
Sorry,
you can talk about Kudus, mate, because you're the Spurs. Do you think Kudus's minutes will improve now? There's been a few departures from Spurs and the Maddison injury, etc.
Well, yeah, I think you asked this question last week, and my answer was, if Maddison gets injured or something like that, you'll see. And it was actually word. I think it was word for word. If Son gets sold to LA Galaxy, for example, maybe he will. So I think he will now. I think he was a decent option anyway. I think now with the money they have paid for him, the good fixtures to start with, and the fact that they just run out of options in that front three or four. I think as well he can play left, right, or century as well with Kudus. I think that's one of the reasons why they bought him. His versatility. I think his stock has risen a lot, and he's definitely a lot more on my radar this week than he was last. I think at 6.5, he could be one of the better ones actually. I think he could be. I think if you took Pens off and Jai, I think the Kudus could now be the best option at 6.5. Bakar, what are your thoughts on the enablers across the board? And are you a fan of Kudus?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Thiago as being, critical to my plans.
Yeah.
There's there's Dubravka. I think those three are the ones that I really like. I guess Dewsbury Hall could be the one in midfield as well. But Kudus, I'm not exactly sure about, because when, let's say, when Brennan is there, Spurs are in the market for other players as well. I think Kudus will start. He could do well, but again, I'm not sure whether long term he's going to play 90 minutes week in, week out, and that's effectively what I'm looking for with my midfielders and with pretty much all of my attackers. So I think that's going to play a bit of a role in my thinking. And that's why I would prefer someone like an NDI or Sar, like Rich brought up. Sar stats are absolutely amazing as well. He actually underperformed his data from last season. Yeah. And he's actually right up there competing with some of the top players for big chances and XG per 90. So I think in that bracket, I would probably resort to them. Rogers got injured last night, but apparently it was a precaution. So I mean, the consensus is that he's probably going to be fine. There's some menu at that price range as well, but I think I'd probably stick to the 6.5 million price bracket if I'm investing.
Talking of Spurs and talking of very, very cheap midfielders as well, just one I'd like to throw up there. He's not my punt because I need to see a little bit more, but Pape Sarr has been playing very well for Spurs in pre-season, and there is, potentially a gap in, either one of the 8s or the 10 role for Spurs. He's 5 million. He would be a sort of massive punt, but I think if he starts midweek in the Super Cup in the number 10 role, I think that we could see quite a lot of change, in terms of how our teams are set up, because he's 5 million. I think he scored 3 goals in pre-season. He tends to score a couple anyway, just from playing as like a 6 or something. So he is just one to keep an eye on there as well. Let's take a quick look at the current Hub AI team, which is changing almost hourly, actually, because, as expected, minutes change, and, across the piece, it massively sort of impacts the team. It's chucked out a very interesting one at the moment. We've talked about quite a few of the players. Interesting choice for the keeper. It's got a double up of Alisson Becker. Haven't seen him in any drafts yet. 5.5, and Kelleher as the keepers. Strong defense, on field anyway, of Milenkovic, Van der Ven, who I think is a snip at 4.5, and Cucurella. And then it's got the Reinildo, the Sunderland 4 million player, and Richards of Palace at 4.5, making up the rest of that back 5 there. Unsurprisingly, it's gone for Mohamed Salah in as captain, and then the rest of the midfield at the moment are Saka, Minter, who seems to be quite liked by all the algorithms, and Tielemans. His defensive contributions, probably come in to the fore there. He's a 6 million option there, and it could be interesting. And then Baleba is the player of choice to move for in that 5 million spot. But as you mentioned, there are other options there, and then the front 3 at the moment of Mateta, Chris Wood, and Ollie Watkins. So that is the current Hub AI team. Some surprises as always. It's gone for Salah, which kind of scares me a touch. I'm assuming it's probably gone for Saka over Palmer, maybe the captaincy for game week 2. What are your thoughts just on that, guys? Just before we move on and take a look at our season stuff. Rich, who is your current sort of captain pick for game week 2?
Yeah, you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, good. No, it's just my view of it's slightly distorted, but it's fine. No, I'm quite surprised at the midfield picks, actually, given the is that on a just a game week 1 basis, or is that like a
looking over 5 weeks?
Yeah, looking over 5 weeks. Interesting how it brings Saka into the game. Who seems to have been absent from just about every draft as a top player. I was asking about Minter earlier. I wanted to get some more understanding of how nailed he was. I was speaking to Jack about it this morning when we were filming a vid, and he's interesting. If the way's cleared for him due to a few departures like a Dingra and other people, he could be a really good pick. He's very attacking, isn't he? So a nice option at 6 million. I'm not sure I'd have 2 6 millions in there with Tielemans alongside him, but it's an interesting and very different team, particularly in the midfield. But I like the front line. That's very safe, isn't it, with Watkins, Wood, and Mateta.
It is, yeah. Bakar, any comment before we move on?
I think it's quite different. I actually like the Tielemans pick. I was going to bring him up when we were speaking about the enablers. I think he could be a very smart enabler with the fixtures that Villa have, and with the defensive contributions and potentially penalties that he might benefit from.
Yeah, it's a good show.
The attack is kind of what you'd expect from an algorithm, which is basically prefer a player with xMins. Saka and Mente are the ones that really surprise me. But apart from that, I just think it's a very, very solid team overall.
Yeah, I agree. As there's a question in the chat. FPL Chip Assistant Man says, "Can you guys speak to how the AI tool changes? What drives those changes?" Well, the data that sits behind the players doesn't really change at this point. It is what it is. It changes week on week as it gathers more information. But what does change, if there's huge knock-on effects. So the fact that for now, for example, Dubravka has gone to Burnley. His minutes will go up. He will be a very viable 4 million option, for example. And what that 4 million will do, it will then, the algorithm or the AI will then look at the rest of the team and say, how can I best spend that 4 million? And that could potentially, that 500,000, that could potentially change 2, 3, 4 players as it kind of move things around, which is why it's incredibly fluid. And we're always looking at injury risks. So we saw this morning Maddison is out. We saw Colwill looks like he's had a knock as well. And there was another injury this morning. I can't think who it is. This someone else who could be out. So we make those adjustments manually ahead of FPL, because FPL in pre-season are quite slow making these sorts of things. And once you bunch in those extra 500,000, the team can completely change. So that's the main driver. But thanks for asking, and hope it makes sense. Fergie is a punt for game week 1, our first one of the season. And I've gone for one. It's maybe not that much of a punt. I think he's going to be in my... I'm not sure if he's in my draft, which I've put on here. But the more and more we talk, this is why it's so dangerous doing Green Arrow on a Thursday night, because it always kind of... Well, I talk myself into these things. But I've gone for a player who's had the path cleared for him, I think. And I'll definitely be going for him if I don't go for Salah. But I think Cody Gakpo at 7.5, I think he showed enough last season in terms of, when he does play, he tends to get a lot of returns. He's very dangerous. I think his competition on that side, he's got a few minutes, the youngster, but I can't see him getting, massive minutes in the Premier League. He may get, an odd 10 or 15 maybe, but I think the Gakpo is, he's probably safe for sort of 70 or 75. But he is my punt for game week 1. And if I go without Salah, which I think is looking increasingly likely, I'll go with him. Even if I go with Salah, I may go with him, because I think regardless, I think he's an excellent option in that price point, and I really like that opening day fixture. So, thoughts, Bakar? You either give a big sigh because you're sick to death of hearing of Cody Gakpo, or you agree, or you don't agree. What are your thoughts, Bakar, on Gakpo? Are you as excited as I am?
I think he's definitely a very spicy differential. I expect him to play, and he's been a prolific performer over the past few seasons, and his minutes are going to be all right for the first 2 or 3 weeks at least.
Yep.
So he could do well. I mean, he's a differential because he's probably not going to play 90 minutes every game, but
yeah,
I can see the logic. Liverpool have one of the most potent attacks in the league, so if you feel like picking a differential, then I think it's a good pick.
Good stuff. Rich, thoughts on Gakpo?
Yeah, like him as a good option, and he could be. If when we're doing that final juggling around at the moment, I've gone back to Verts, and he's 1 million more. That 1 million solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? When you're tinkering around and want to find something you like the look of. So easier to fit in than a Verts or a Bruno, and very high potential in that first game. So if he's nailed, then great option.
I think he's nailed to start, is he?
Yeah,
exactly.
I think so. Well, I think he's got to be.
Diaz has gone. Darwin's gone.
No one else has to be.
And I suppose I'm thinking about it with my strategy potential no Salah. I think if I was going for no Salah, I think I would definitely go for Gakpo and Verts, because having 2 Liverpool attackers against a lot who just have 1 in Salah, I just feel if Salah does kick on and go crazy and score a couple of goals, there is a likelihood that the other guys are involved. If Salah gets the assist for a Gakpo goal, it's not the end of the world then. So I think that I might be going for them. I'll share my Salah team, which I think is on screen. I'll share my non-Salah team, which I've just built on my phone as we speak, in a little bit. Before we look at our updated drafts, if you want your FPL team rated by AI for free, just click the top link in the description below to get your team rated. It will also give you transfer recommendations if you want. So let's move on and take a look at our teams. And firstly, Rich, we've got your team on screen now. Do you want to run through your team and your thinking for the opening week or two.
Yes, okay. I've changed it quite substantially from last week. The Dubravka move has certainly helped, and so that's allowed me to go for a 5 million keeper in Robert Sanchez. He comes into the team to cover the Chelsea defence, and I've gone for Dubravka as the second keeper. I have kept Virgil. He's been in and out of the team all day, but I brought him back in the version that I sent you at the sacrifice of Munoz, who I really like at 0.5 cheaper. But I just, like the idea of just having a sort of set and forget with Virgil and perhaps with Milenkovic for a long time. And then just juggling the other three positions around according to the fixture. So, yeah, Milenkovic is in over Murillo just because of the attacking threat. I think he's got sort of almost equal DEFCON potential. Murillo's better on bonus, but Milenkovic is better on attacking returns. And so I've gone for Milenkovic for the Forest cover. I've gone for Van der Ven. I think you just talked him up a few minutes ago. Like him as a 4.5 option. Really like him for that Burnley fixture. And then the second 4.5 to go with that, I think I can't quite see my draft at the moment. Yeah, I've gone for Guehi. So a lot of people going for Richards as a cheap Palace option. I like a Palace defender. I really like Munoz, but there's a million more than these guys. Van der Ven and the Palace defenders rotate really nicely over the opening fixtures, so that's kind of made me pick a Palace defender over Conser, who was in my draft for about 10 days, and so he left today for a Palace. So this is just illustrating where I'm at. I'm just juggling these sort of cheaper players really, and not really quite settled on them. In the midfield, I've gone for the template of Salah and Palmer, and I've got Wirtz in at the moment as the third choice. However, your discussion about Gakpo there and your punt on Gakpo is making me think there's a million there, and maybe I can have Munoz after all. So maybe Gakpo and Munoz is better than Wirtz and Guehi. Could be a decision like that it comes down to. My fifth mid is Elliot Anderson, who is right up the top of the defensive contribution area, and I like him, as I said this morning to Jack. I like the idea of having a guy that's often on the bench for me, but will come on and have a higher floor, but not necessarily score 20 points on the bench like a Rodgers or somebody that I might have benched often last season and really annoy me. So just having someone who's getting 4 or 5 points most weeks, and it's okay to bench him, but equally he's gonna plod along through the season, returning those regular defensive returns. So I like Anderson, and he's in just due to Forest fixtures. Up front, I've got Watkins. We've talked about him, and I think that was an easy decision just to fill the 9. I had Gyökeres last week, and although I think he's getting closer to starting that United fixture, I do think Villa are on better form and have nicer fixtures. So I'm just going to go with Ollie Watkins out the gate, and it's an easy swap or downgrade to another player afterwards. And at the minute, I have got João Pedro in the team, but he's by no means nailed for me. I just think that it's very high ownership. I'm very optimistic and bullish on Chelsea after their World Cup win, and I think he'll definitely start game week 1. So he's in, but he is a minute's risk. So never said he was 90 minutes. By the way, Fergie, I can't hear Bakar, so you'll have to relay what he thinks to me. And
he said it's bloody awful. He said it's awful. He said you give up the game.
Yeah. I can see him in a little box, but his voice has disappeared, so we can't.
Yeah, all good. Bakar, what do you think there of Rich's team so far?
I think it's very solid. I'm struggling to pick any holes in it. I think it's very, very good. Thumbs up for me, Rich.
He said it's bloody awful, Rich. He said you need to sort yourself out. You just put more time into it. No. He said it's very solid, Rich. He said it's very, very solid, and he likes it. Yeah, no qualms from me. They're interesting in the chat. FPL Freddy said got the same strikers in midfield, but he says you've got Sarr and Wirtz. And he says, and I have Bruno and Gakpo. So, yeah, there are some certain sort of trade-offs there. Maybe another 500,000 defense or something. But, yeah, really, really solid there, Rich. In terms
Yeah.
of strategy, are you contemplating a bench boost early on, or could have any
I
other
am.
tips?
I think I'm looking at really understanding a little bit more about Mark Gue. I'm keeping an eye on the Thiago situation, like Bakar is, and the Wissa situation over the next week. If we get clarity there, I'll try and work Thiago back in, because I don't really like having non-playing players. I've always played with a strong bench anyway, so I'm not worried about carrying the money, in the bench on a guy I can bench some weeks. And I'd rather have a 6 million striker than a 4.5. But if he's not himself a minute's risk, I think I'd probably rather save the 1.5 million on and have Gue in there as the third striker. But yeah, bench boost game week 2 if Gue looks like he's going to play. And I like taking on that Burnley Sunderland fixture, because Burnley, they were clean sheet monsters and only conceded 16 goals in 42 games in the Championship, which is insane, isn't it?
That is crazy. Yeah. What was Arsenal's year? Didn't Arsenal have a year where they had do Arsenal hold the record? It was like 22 or something like that. Crazy like
in
that.
The Premier League, right?
In the Premier League, yeah. But 16 is is crazy. Let's have a look at Bakar's team, what he's got so far. Bakar, do you want to share your team and your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've gone with Sanchez in goal, pretty much like Rich did. Chelsea are second for XG conceded this calendar year, so I wanted to have at least one piece of the pie when it came to the defense. Dubravka at 4 million is now an easy decision. Porro is my most expensive defender. I'm pretty sure I'll have at least one Spurs defender to begin with, and given that I had the funds to pick Porro, I went with him, naturally being the most attacking. Colwell, I think, will obviously now drop out now that he's injured. I will probably have to find a replacement. Maybe I look at another Chelsea defender or a Spurs defender or a Palace defender to replace him with. I'll have to look at the rotation. Williams, I think Rich mentioned how good Forest's opening fixtures are, and I think having at least one Forest defender is fine. I don't want to overcommit and go with more than one, because the defensive numbers weren't amazing last season. But I feel as if having one is good. Apart from that, I've gone with Estev on the bench, and Anderson is the 4.5 defender of choice, because he does pretty well for baseline bonus and defensive contribution points. I've already spoken about Salah, Palmer, Bruno in detail. I have Ndiaye, as he's expected to play 90 minutes in pretty much most games. I'm actually monitoring the Grealish transfer. If Everton are to go for Grealish, then Ndiaye's minutes might drop, in which case I won't pick him, because a large part of his appeal comes from the fact that he's a 90-minute man on penalties for Everton. Had he actually been classified as a midfielder last season, he would have gained close to 15 points as a result of his DEFCONs and clean sheet points. I have Anderson for similar reasons to Rich. Up front, I have Solanke, but now, as you mentioned, he's not in the squad again, so there are serious question marks regarding his selection. I will, there's only one friendly to rely on, which seems like very risky business. So I'll probably find a way to upgrade him to Watkins with the information available right now. In which case, I will have to, I think, downgrade one of my attackers, because currently in this team I'm playing with 8 playable attackers. Rich's team had 7, and Gio as the 8th. I'm playing with 8, so I'll probably just downgrade an attacker, upgrade Solanke to Watkins. Thiago's in there because it looks as if Wissa is going to leave, and if that's the case, then Thiago's going to be locked in my team. I really like Evan Nilsson. I hope I can pick him, but then again, I get the feeling that maybe if I have to free up funds, he may be the fall guy. So these are the decisions that I'm weighing up.
Are you going to pick Thiago based on the fact that he's a 6 million forward, and just because he kind of fits in there, or are you thinking of picking him sort of on merit because you think he is a viable option, just out of interest?
I think he's a viable option at 6 million. That's the thing. I think he'll do all right for his price, basically.
Good point. Well made, the Bakar. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at my team finally. Hopefully, Rich will be back in a minute now. No worries. My team then at the moment. So I am absolutely. I'm in a pickle. I'm in a mess. I've gone with this no Salah, no Haaland, bench boost game week 1, free hit game week 2 strategy, which I'm really excited about. The current draft I'm showing at the moment is a Salah draft. It is a bench boost draft potentially, but there's a lots of sort of ifs and buts in there. But at the moment I've gone for Verbruggen and De Vrabka, who appreciate away to Spurs isn't ideal, but I am a bit of a hedger as well, and I do feel like if I go for Solanke, for example, and Spurs blank, just getting those extra points back is not is not the worst thing. You did mention, Rich, about they only conceded 60 goals last year. That record, by the way, John Brett Smith in the chat has reminded me it was 15 by Chelsea in the 04-05 season. Absolutely insane. But yeah, I am going for Pedro Porro. I am really hot on Porro. I think he is going to absolutely thrive in this new Spurs team. His numbers are ridiculous all the time anyway. So I'm going for Porro. I am also going really heavy on Cucurella, Milenkovic as well. So 3 expensive defenders. And at the moment, I've got 2 4.5s as well in Van de Ven. And I'm going for Juve as well, the West Ham player we mentioned earlier. This is my Salah team. It's worth saying. My non-Salah team is a lot more expensive at the back. In midfield at the moment, I've got Salah, Palmer. I like Minter, and I'm also going for a Dingra potentially and Dewsbury Hall. Now, this is a pure bench boost team where I'm going kind of all out looking for attackers for game week 1 who've also got obviously home games in game week 3. And because I've sort of saved a bit of money there in midfield, then it has allowed me a Watkins, Wood, and Solanke up front there in this Salah team. So this would be a bench boost for game week 1, free hit game week 2 targeting. I really like Bakar's Evan Nielsen pick for game week 2. I think that I think he's a fantastic player, and I do think I think he's going to have a superb season. My non-Salah team, just to run through it really briefly, just to show what you can do with the money, is Verbruggen and Ruefs, who is the new Sunderland keeper at home to West Ham in game week 1. It is Porro, Milenkovic, Cucurella, Juve, and De Cooper of Brighton, and then it is Gakpo, Wirtz, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, Anderson, Watkins, Wood, and Solanke. So that is like spreading the funds a touch more. It's crazy.
All at home, right?
They're all at home. They've all got good fixtures at home. And then obviously I'll free hit in game week 2, back in game week 3. And I think the captaincy in game week 3, as Bakar mentioned earlier, I think if Bruno starts the season well, then he could be a good captain shout in game week 3. So this is what I mean about I don't want my whole season to rest on one Friday evening, and this I am really tempted to go, especially because I can get Gakpo and Wirtz. So
I watched your pod right with Jack. I watched your there's videos with 1-to-1 team reveals with a lot of the hub contributors, and Fergie had one go out this morning. Catch it if you can later, guys. And he goes through this more aggressive team in that video. Mate, I loved that team. I loved it that you were out there with something different, and I can hear Bakar now. So let's have a 3-way on this, because basically, I thought that you were doing something different. You were going out on your own, and that team looked absolutely mustard, right? The only downside of this, and the downside, is that you're just going to be out of chips very quickly. You'll have a triple captain left and nothing for
I don't mind that
weeks.
though. I don't honestly don't mind that.
Yeah, but this team you've now done, this compromise team where you've put Salah and Palmer back in, or just got added Salah but kept Palmer. You've almost pulled the belt straight in. And you're still going to use all your chips, but that team probably won't beat mine and Bakar's team.
I know,
if you don't get a good bench boost, you'll just maybe get an extra 5 points or something, and you'll have used all your chips. So I actually like the one you've gone out there with this morning. Just it's just a
do
bit of
it.
FOMO about going for it on your own. And I think if you get some other people catching on, because some of the ultra guys loved it, they thought it was great, you know. So I think you should.
I think
you
I
should
think
be
I am going to
brave,
do
but
it.
yeah.
I think the only way
I
I'm not going to is
Yeah.
just to say I'm obviously a bit scared of Salah, right? And I don't want my season to finish on the Friday night, right? If Mark Gue is definitely going to start for Sunderland, and I can have that third forward as a 4.5 million play-in player, I probably will go for Salah, because then I think it makes sense. But if not, I don't think I will. I think I'll go without Salah. So yeah, I think I am. Bakar,
I mean,
interested in your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I just want to sort of, put it on record that I've played around with no Salah and Holland teams, and the teams look absolutely insane. So I can see the merits to doing it. There's like genuine merit to having a no Salah and a no Holland team to begin the season with. Like jokes apart, it's actually quite viable if Salah doesn't go mental. But obviously, you need to know the risks. But I think the teams are actually very, very viable. It's just that when you say it out loud that you won't have Salah on Friday night, then in game week 2 you're free hitting, and then game week 3 you're potentially picking a differential captain. And what's the plan for game week 4? Are you quitting FPL in game week 4? Is that the plan?
Well, is Salah? So Salah's home to Arsenal in game week.
Yeah,
Game week 3, is that right?
correct. Correct.
Do you
Yeah,
think he'll
correct.
still be the highest captain if he doesn't do that great in game week 1 or 2? Do you think he'll still be the sort of
Uh,
default captain? Whereas there are other
I think
options.
he'll definitely be more captain than someone like a Bruno. I still don't think Bruno will be
We'll say
the
that.
popular captain that week. I do think Salah will be one of the popular options. He always is. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Maybe someone like a Watkins or a Palmer could be an alternative in game week 3, but I mean, if Salah shows any sort of form in the opening 2 fixtures, I sort of find it hard to believe that people won't start with him.
I mean, I can always wild card, right? If sort of worst case. So just to finish off my very loose plan, Bakar, is to bench boost in game week 1, free hit in game week 2. I'll have a really good team in game week 3 because all the players who played in game week 1 are also home in game week 3, and then a wild card then in game week 4. And the thought is to try and get a good start, a fair lead over yourself and Rich and everyone else. And then while you guys are then thinking, oh, shall I use my bench boost in game week 8? I'm going to have to bring this player in, and then someone else gets injured, and then you're, very intricately dancing through the game week, trying to make the most out of your chips. Mine are done and dusted. My bench will be Davrabka, Mark Gue, and I just done. I don't have to think about it anymore. And by game week 4, we're going to know who the bench fodder is as well. So there's a bit more to it rather than just just get off to a fast start, right? If a wild card in game week 4, we got the AFCON transfers in 16. Don't have to worry about chips. I don't have to worry about trying to make my bench work and stuff. And I'm pretty excited. And another thing as well is I think I always play better when I'm in front rather than when I'm behind, because when I chase, I do tend to make more emotional, dramatic decisions, I think. Whereas, if I have got a 20 or 30 point lead over Rich, for example, I'll probably play a lot more sort of sensibly. So there is a bit, there's a fair bit of thought. I think if I can get over the Friday night, I think I'll be fine.
Yeah, I think what the issue you've got really, it just getting it sort of straightened down in your head is that I think that the sort of engaged managers who are maybe watching this show or doing the tinkering all the time right at the moment, they can see a way to bench boost early and play long, and I think that's attractive to the sensible engaged managers. You can keep your chips to when you want to use them. You may bench boost early, you may not, but you can put a team together, not spend too much on that bench now, and then see an opportunity to use it in good games in either game week 2. I think there's another opportunity in game week 8 when Burnley play Leeds, I think it is, so you can look a little bit further forward. So there are going to be other opportunities if you duck game week 2 for some reason. and so people can play the long game and then play those fixture swings. So that's kind of what you're taking on with getting it all out there. But it's a nice tactic because you and I both were down at sort of 2, 3, 4 million for most of last season. It's tough coming back from there, isn't it? It's really tough. I don't want it either.
Fergie, I just wanted to sort of raise the point that, why are you laughing? I mean, I haven't even made the point. I was just going to say that, the no Salah strategy, even though, the team that the no Salah and Haaland team look like really good on paper, the one reason why I sort of discarded that idea for my personal team was the fact that it's very similar to what, if you sort of look at the downside risk, if you look at what happened last season for people who had Haaland in their teams in the opening first 5-6 games, it was practically a lot of us engaged managers, but then who did not make the Salah swap at the right time. Now, within that 5 to 6 game week period, if you take captaincy into account, Salah outscored Haaland by close to 100 points. Now, I'm not saying it will be 100 points again, but let's say even if it's like 30, 40 points, by game week 4 or 5, do you then consider bringing Salah in? Because then you're always questioning, do I follow the crowd even though I'm like, an X number of points behind? Or do I then risk it by not picking Salah and picking a differential captain week in, week out? So that's the risk that you run with that strategy.
Yeah. And that's
very well put.
It is. And that's the dilemma. It's whether I'm willing to put it all, sort of all on the line. And being a content creator, as we know, right, it's really tough to come on here every week at 8 million and try and give tips and advice on how to play the game. But on the same note, haven't really enjoyed playing FPL very much the last 4 or 5 years because of FOMO and because I haven't been playing my own way. So I'm not.
You're just to say one thing, your record in the other games is superb. As you're an elite level Telegraph player, an elite level Sky player, you won Sun Dream Team. You're absolutely superb multi-format fantasy football player.
I play my own way because I don't have to stand up in front of however many, hundreds or thousands of people and try and advise on things. But anyway, Harry Kane has just scored against Spurs for Bayern Munich, which is fun. Okay, let's stop talking about my team and let's close for the week. We do have. I'm not sure if we've got it, Scott. If you want to put it in the chat, but we have got a Green Arrow mini league, and we'll have some prizes this year as well for first, second, and third. So if you aren't in our mini league, Scott will put it now in the chat for everyone to join. But thank you, Rich, as usual, for the week. Looking forward to next week. We've got Lovro on next week, the current FPL champion. I wonder what Lovro will think of our strategies, Rich. But thank you so much. And where can people get hold of you, Rich?
I'm on at Rich Clarke FPL on X and Blue Sky.
And Bakar, an absolute pleasure as always. A voice of calm, a voice of reason, a voice of insight. We absolutely love having you on. So thank you so much for joining us, Bakar. Where can people get hold of you?
They can get hold of me, BIGMANBAKR, on my X and Instagram.
Superb. And my Twitter is at FFH_Fergi X. I have to start saying X now. I think it's time. So this podcast video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, where the podcast version is available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please press the like button if you haven't already. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Apparently, it's a penalty for Bayern Munich now as well, which would be interesting if Kane scores 2 straight away. We'll see. We will be back next week. So Rich and I will be back next week with our team reveals, which is likely to be Wednesday evening next week. But we are back with none other than the reigning FPL champion, Lovro Budicin. Next week we'll be live with Lovro. In the meantime, hope you enjoy your tinkering and may all your arrows be green. Good night all.
Thank you.